Ladies and gentlemen, friends and dreamers, somewhere along the way, life got loud. The noise of expectations, the weight of responsibility, the pressure to survive, to succeed, to be strong, it started stealing your peace. You smile in public, but inside, your mind won't rest. Your heart is tired. Your spirit feels heavy. And you've been asking yourself quietly, God, will I ever feel whole again? Some people think that. Losing peace means you're weak, faithless, or not strong enough. But the truth is, losing your peace is not a failure. It's a signal. It's a sign that you've been carrying weight that was never meant to sit on your shoulders alone. You've been trying to be strong for everyone, responsible for everything, and available at all times while quietly ignoring the condition of your own soul. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human. Life has a way of slowly piling things on you. It doesn't usually come all at once. It starts with responsibility, then expectation, then disappointment, then pressure. Before you realize it, your mind is crowded, your heart is tired, and peace feels like a distant memory. You wake up tired, even after sleeping. You feel overwhelmed by simple decisions, and deep down, you know something isn't right, but you keep pushing anyway, telling yourself you'll rest later. The problem is, later keeps getting delayed. God never designed you to live in survival mode. Constant stress was never meant to be your permanent state. When peace begins to slip away, it's not God abandoning you, it's God calling your attention. He's saying, come back to me. You're doing too much on your own. Just like physical pain alerts you that something is wrong in your body, emotional and spiritual unrest alert you that your soul needs care. Many people confuse faith with self-reliance. They think trusting God means never feeling tired, never feeling overwhelmed, never feeling afraid. But faith does not cancel emotion. Faith gives you a place to take it. Even the strongest believers had moments of exhaustion, doubt, and fear. The difference is they didn't hide it from God. They brought it to Him. You can love God deeply and still feel worn out. You can pray sincerely and still feel anxious. You can be faithful and still need rest. None of that disqualifies you. In fact, it's often the most responsible, the most caring, and the most committed people who lose their peace first because we're the ones who carry everyone else. Some of you have been holding things together so long that people assume you're fine. They see your strength, not your struggle. They see your consistency, not your cost. But God sees the silent battles. He sees the tears you wipe away before anyone notices. He sees the nights you lie awake, replaying conversations, worrying about outcomes and questioning yourself. And He's not disappointed in you. He's compassionate towards you. Losing peace doesn't mean you're falling apart. It means you've been holding on too tightly. Peace leaves when control takes over. When you try to manage everything, fix everyone, and predict every outcome, your mind never rests. God never asked you to be the savior. That role is already filled. Your responsibility is not to carry the world, it's to trust the one who holds it. God's invitation is not to try harder, but to rest deeper, to lay down what's too heavy, to admit what you've been denying, to stop pretending you're okay when you're not. Strength is not found in silence. It's found in surrender. When you acknowledge that your peace is gone, you're not admitting defeat. You're opening the door to restoration. God restores peace to those who are honest about their need. Not those who perform strength, but those who seek help. Not those who hide, but those who come. So if your peace feels fragile right now, don't judge yourself. Don't shame yourself. Listen to what it's telling you. It's calling you back to God's presence, back to balance, back to trust. And when you respond, you'll discover that God was never waiting to condemn you. He was waiting to carry you. Many people believe that peace only comes after the problem is solved, after the storm passes, after everything finally lines up. But God's peace works differently. God's peace doesn't wait for the storm to end. It shows up right in the middle of it. That's why peace is not defined by what's happening around you, but by who is with you within it. The presence of trouble does not mean the absence of God. Storms are a guaranteed part of life. Challenges, delays, disappointments, and uncertainty will come whether you are faithful or not. What changes is not the storm itself, but your position in it. When you walk without God, the storm controls you. When you walk with God, you can stand steady even while everything is shaking. Peace becomes an anchor, not an escape. Some of you are waiting for everything to calm down before you allow yourself to rest. You keep saying, once this is over, then I'll have peace. But that day keeps moving further away because life never stops happening. There will always be another challenge, another responsibility, another unknown. If your peace depends on perfect conditions, you'll never experience it. God offers peace that is independent of circumstances. God's peace doesn't mean you won't feel pressure. It means pressure won't crush you. It doesn't mean fear won't knock. It means fear won't stay. It doesn't mean you won't have questions. It means your questions won't steal your confidence. Divine peace is the ability to remain grounded when everything around you feels unstable. Sometimes God calms the storm. Other times, God calms you. And when he calms you, the storm loses its power. The waves may still rise, the wind may still howl, but inside there's a quiet confidence that says, I'm not alone. This will not destroy me. That kind of peace cannot be manufactured by positive thinking or self-help. It comes from trust. Trust grows when you remember what God has already brought you through. The same God who carried you through past storms is still present now. The same God who made a way when there was no way is still working behind the scenes. Storms don't erase God's faithfulness, they reveal it. Often you don't recognize how strong your faith has become until it's tested. Some of you feel guilty for struggling in this season. You wonder why you're anxious when you should be grateful, or why you're tired when you should be strong. But peace is not pretending the storm isn't real. Peace is acknowledging the storm while choosing trust over panic. God never asked you to deny reality. He asked you to depend on him. Peace in the storm also requires focus. What you focus on will either fuel fear or feed faith. When your eyes stay on the waves, anxiety grows. When your eyes stay on God, calm follows. You may not control the storm, but you can control where you place your attention. Every moment you choose prayer over panic, faith over fear, surrender over stress, peace deepens. God's peace is not fragile. It doesn't break when bad news arrives. It doesn't disappear when the outcome is uncertain. It doesn't vanish when people disappoint you. God's peace is strong enough to hold you steady while life is doing its worst. This season is teaching you something. Being powerful, that peace is not something you find after the storm, but something you carry through it. When you realize that God is with you right now, not just after everything works out, your heart begins to rest even before the situation changes. And one day when the storm finally passes, you'll look back and realize the greatest miracle wasn't just your survival, it was the peace God gave you while everything was still shaking. Before anything meaningful is destroyed, peace is usually the first thing attacked. The enemy understands something many people overlook. If your peace is gone, your strength soon follows. You don't have to be knocked down by failure if you can be worn down by worry. You don't have to lose your purpose if you can be distracted by fear. That's why anxiety, doubt, and restlessness often show up right before something important is about to happen in your life. When your peace is under attack, it doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like constant overthinking, replaying conversations, imagining worst-case scenarios, feeling uneasy for no clear reason. You wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep, but because your mind never rested. These are not random feelings. They are signs that something valuable inside you is being targeted. Your purpose carries weight, and anything with weight attracts resistance. The greater the calling, the greater the opposition. That's why people who are meant to lead, to create, to heal, to influence often and experience internal battles long before external breakthroughs. The enemy would rather keep you anxious than attack you directly, because a distracted mind is easier to defeat than a determined one. Peace is not just a feeling, it's a weapon. When you have peace, you think clearly. When you have peace, you hear God more clearly. When you have peace, you make better decisions. Take away peace and everything becomes harder. Confusion replaces clarity. Emotion overrides wisdom. Small problems feel overwhelming. That's why guarding your peace is not optional, it's essential. Many people assume spiritual attack only looks like obvious temptation or open failure. But one of the most subtle strategies is mental exhaustion. If you are constantly tired, constantly worried, constantly stressed, you don't have the energy to pursue your purpose fully. You may still show up physically, but mentally and emotionally you're drained. That's exactly where the enemy wants you. Busy but ineffective, active but unfocused. Some of you are questioning yourself more than ever. You're second-guessing decisions you used to be confident about. You're doubting gifts that once flowed naturally. That's not because you've lost ability. It's because your peace has been shaken. And when peace is shaken, confidence starts to wobble. But hear this clearly. Your purpose did not disappear just because your peace was disturbed. God never intended for you to fight for your future in a constant state of anxiety. He designed peace to be your posture, not your reward. You don't earn peace after you succeed. You protect peace so you can succeed. That's why God repeatedly calls his people to be still, to rest, to not be afraid. Those are not gentle suggestions. They are strategic instructions. The moment you recognize that your peace is under attack, you can respond intentionally. You stop feeding worry with attention. You stop giving fear the microphone. You become selective about what you listen to, what you dwell on, and who you allow to speak into your life. Guarding your peace means setting boundaries, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Peace returns when you realign with God's truth instead of your thoughts. Not every thought deserves your agreement. Not every fear deserves your focus. Some thoughts are invitations to panic, not instructions to act. When you learn to pause, pray, and recenter, peace regains its place. The enemy may try to shake your peace, but he cannot steal your purpose unless you surrender it. And when you choose peace again and again, you starve distraction and strengthen destiny. Your calm becomes your resistance. Your peace becomes your power. And what was meant to wear you down ends up building you up. Instead, restoration always begins with release. God cannot restore what you are unwilling to let go of. Many people ask God for peace, healing, and renewal while still holding tightly to the very things that drained them in the first P. Haste, pain, resentment, regret, guilt, control, these become familiar, and familiarity can feel safer than surrender. But what feels familiar is often what keeps you stuck. Letting go is difficult because it feels like loss. You fear that if you release the hurt, it means what happened didn't matter. You fear that if you stop holding on, there will be no justice. You fear that if you give up control, everything will fall apart. But letting go is not denial, and it is not weakness. Letting go is an act of trust. It says, God, I don't understand this, but I trust you with it. Some of you are carrying pain from situations that ended long ago, but they still live in your thoughts. The relationship is over. The opportunity passed. The words were spoken years ago, yet the emotional weight remains. You replay moments, imagining what you should have said or done differently. Each replay reopens the wound. God is saying, you keep revisiting what I already delivered you from. Healing cannot fully happen while you keep reopening the door. Control is another heavy burden many people refuse to release. You try to manage outcomes, people's reactions, and future possibilities. You think that if you plan enough, worry enough, and prepare for every scenario, you can prevent pain. But control is an illusion. It drains your peace because it keeps your mind working overtime. God never asked you to control the future. He asked you to trust him with it. Letting go also means forgiving, not because people deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Unforgiveness chains you to the past. It keeps your emotions tied to someone else's actions. Forgiveness doesn't excuse what happened. It frees you from carrying it. When you refuse to forgive, you keep drinking poison, hoping the other person feels the effect. God's desire is not for you to stay bitter, but to become whole. Sometimes what you need to release is not anger toward others, but disappointment in yourself. You blame yourself for missed opportunities, poor decisions, or delayed progress. You replay your mistakes and label yourself by them. But God never defines you by your worst moment. If He has forgiven you, why are you still punishing yourself? Restoration begins when you agree with God's grace instead of your guilt. Letting go is uncomfortable because it requires humility. It forces you to admit that you cannot fix everything on your own. But humility is the doorway to peace. When you stop fighting to hold everything together, God steps in and does what only He can do. Peace doesn't come from having control. It comes from surrendering it. God's restoration is not partial. When you release what's hurting you, God replaces it with what heals you. He doesn't just remove the burden, He restores strength. He doesn't just take away pain, He gives you clarity. But the exchange cannot happen while your hands are full of the past. You don't have to let go all at once. Sometimes release happens in layers, prayer by prayer, decision by decision. Each time you choose to trust instead of cling, peace returns a little more. And eventually you realize that what you were afraid to release was the very thing blocking your restoration. God is not asking you to forget. He is asking you to free yourself. Letting go is not losing, it's making room. And when you finally open your hands, you'll discover that peace was never far away. It was waiting for you to release what no longer belonged in your future. Many people believe peace comes after clarity, after everything makes sense, after God explains the full plan. But God rarely works that way. He does not give peace as a reward for understanding. He gives peace as a result of obedience. Obedience often comes before explanation, and peace often follows obedience. That is why some of the calmest people you'll ever meet are not the ones with the most answers, but the ones who trust God the most. Obedience is difficult because it requires movement without certainty. It asks you to take a step when you can't see the whole staircase. Your mind wants guarantees. Your heart wants reassurance. But faith operates in trust, not proof. When God calls you to obey, He is not asking you to ignore reality. He is asking you to rely on Him more than what you see. Some of you are anxious because you are trying to understand everything before you move. You want to know how it will work, how long it will take, and what the outcome will be. But overthinking often delays obedience, and delayed obedience delays peace. God's peace shows up when you stop wrestling for control and start walking in faith. Obedience does not always feel spiritual or dramatic. Sometimes it looks like resting when you want to keep pushing. Sometimes it looks like apologizing when you want to defend yourself. Sometimes it looks like walking away from something familiar because God is leading you somewhere new. These quiet acts of obedience often carry more power than bold declarations because they align your heart with God's will. Peace follows obedience because obedience realigns your priorities. When you obey God, you shift the responsibility from yourself to Him. You're saying, I'll do my part and I trust you to do yours. That shift alone brings calm. You're no longer carrying the weight of outcomes. You're simply being faithful in the process. Many people misunderstand obedience as restriction, but obedience is actually protection. God doesn't ask you to obey to limit your joy. He asks you to obey to preserve your peace. Every instruction from God is rooted in love, even when it's uncomfortable. What God asks you to release is often what's draining you. What God asks you to pursue is often what will heal you. There are moments when obedience will not immediately change your circumstances, but it will change you. Your situation may look the same, but your heart will be steadier. Your mind will be quieter. Your reactions will be calmer. That inner shift is peace taking root. And once peace takes root, it begins to influence everything else. Some of you are waiting for peace before you obey, but God is waiting for obedience before he releases peace. That doesn't mean God withholds peace as punishment. It means peace is the fruit of alignment. When your life is aligned with God's direction, your spirit finds rest, even if the journey is still challenging. Obedience also builds confidence. Each step you take strengthens your trust in God. You begin to see that he meets you where you are, that he provides as you move, not before you move. That realization quiets fear. You stop asking, what if this doesn't work, and start believing God will carry me through. You don't need to know the whole plan to experience peace. You just need to obey the next instruction, the next step, the next right decision. God's peace doesn't require perfect understanding. It requires willing hearts. And as you continue to obey, you'll notice something powerful happening. The noise in your mind begins to fade. The pressure in your chest begins to ease, not because life suddenly became easy, but because you're no longer walking alone. Obedience has placed you back under God's covering, and under his covering, peace always follows. When God restores your peace, it doesn't just change how you feel on the inside. It transforms how your life speaks on the outside. Restored peace becomes visible. It shows up in your reactions, your decisions, your tone, and your presence. People may not know what you've been through, but they will notice something different about you. In a world driven by panic, pressure, and constant noise, peace stands out. Your peace becomes your testimony because it cannot be explained by circumstances alone. When people know your story, know your losses, know your struggles, and still see you standing with calm confidence, they recognize that something greater is at work. You didn't get here by luck, denial, or emotional numbness. You got here because God restored you from the inside out. There was a time when the same situations would have triggered anxiety, anger, or fear. The same words would have shaken you. The same delays would have frustrated you. But now your response is different. Not because life got easier, but because your heart got stronger. That change is evidence of God's work. Peace is proof that healing happened where pain once lived. Restored peace also changes how you treat others. When you are no longer operating from exhaustion or insecurity, you stop reacting defensively. You listen more. You respond with patience. You extend grace more freely. Peace softens you without weakening you. It allows you to be firm without being harsh, confident without being arrogant, and honest without being bitter. Your calm in chaos becomes an unspoken message. It tells people that panic is not the only option. It shows them that faith can coexist with difficulty. Many people are not convinced by sermons or speeches, but they are deeply impacted by what they observe. When they watch you handle pressure with stability and disappointment with hope, your life becomes a living testimony of God's restoring power. Restored peace also protects your future. When you are no longer driven by fear, you make wiser decisions. You don't rush into relationships out of loneliness. You don't chase opportunities out of desperation. You don't compromise values to escape discomfort. Peace gives you the clarity to wait, the courage to say no, and the confidence to trust God's timing. Some of you underestimate the impact of your peace. You think your testimony has to be loud, dramatic, or public, but often the most powerful testimonies are quiet. It's the way you keep moving forward without bitterness. It's the way you refuse to be consumed by what hurt you. It's the way you remain hopeful without being naive. That kind of peace speaks volumes. God restores peace, not just for your benefit, but for his glory. When people ask how you're holding up, and you can honestly say, by the grace of God, that points them to him. Your peace becomes an invitation for others to seek the same source of strength. It opens doors for conversations. encouragement, and connection. Peace does not mean you never struggle again. It means struggle no longer defines you. It means difficulty no longer controls your reactions. It means fear no longer has the final say. Your peace becomes a boundary that protects your heart, your mind, and your purpose. One day, you'll look back and realize that what God restored was greater than what you lost. You didn't just survive. You were transformed. Your peace became your proof that God heals, sustains, and renews. And as others watch your life, they'll see that restoration is possible, that calm can return, and that God is faithful to those who trust him. When God restores your peace, your life becomes a testimony not of perfection, but of grace. And that testimony will speak to hearts long after words fade.